Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called for a face-to-face meeting between himself and Vladimir Putin in an open letter sent to Moscow.
A coalition of 11 European countries is stepping up pressure to tighten visa conditions for Russian tourists.
The owners of a bar that caught fire during New Year celebrations in a Swiss ski resort were in court once again to be questioned.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has proposed a face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin in an open letter to the Russian leader, saying he was ready for a, quote, full ceasefire. The letter marks one of the few times Zelenskyy has appealed directly to Putin since Russia's 2022 full-scale invasion, and the first time he has ever sent a letter directly to the Russian leader. Zelenskyy opened the letter on Thursday saying when Vladimir Putin came to power over 26 years ago, many people in Ukraine viewed Putin positively. But that is now in the past, Zelenskyy said. According to the Ukrainian leader, now the overwhelming majority of Ukrainians view it positively that, quote, our long-range drones paid a visit to the opening of your forum in St. Petersburg, covering a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers. It is not the first time Zelenskyy, who believes only face-to-face talks will yield an agreement on territory, has called for a meeting with Putin. But this time, the Ukrainian presidential office confirmed the letter was sent to Moscow and was shared with Kyiv's partners, including the US. In response to the letter, the Kremlin said on Thursday evening that Zelenskyy is welcome to meet with Putin in Moscow anytime.
A coalition of 9 EU member states plus Iceland and Norway is stepping up pressure to tighten visa conditions for Russian tourists as the summer holiday season approaches. The initiative was led by Sweden with the support of Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands and Poland.
What I want to accomplish is very clear. I want there to be no more shopping weekends. I want there to be no more fancy trips to Europe while Ukrainians are dying on the battlefield.
All 11 countries signed a joint letter highlighting the uneven implementation of the European Commission's guidelines on handling visa applications from Russian nationals. The signatories argue that this fragmentation weakens EU leverage and sends mixed messages about the bloc's resolve towards Russia. The letter also warns that uneven visa practices for Russian tourists may create a security risk across the entire Schengen area. The 11 countries are calling on the EU institutions to introduce new binding visa restrictions and monitor the effective implementation of existing guidelines.
The EU is losing hopes in the chances of enforcing a full ban on maritime services for Russian tankers. The measure was approved in April as part of the 20th package of sanctions to cripple Moscow's war economy. It aims to prohibit all maritime-related services, including banking, shipping, flagging and insurance for tankers carrying Russian oil. Turmoil in energy markets, coupled with persistently high oil prices, have hindered the measure's activation.
Events in the Gulf have clearly changed the calculus about anything to do with energy. For the moment, what all Western economies are struggling with is access to energy at reasonable prices. So I think at this point there is no appetite to take additional measures which might aggravate that situation.
The official reason for the pause was a desire to reach an agreement at the G7 level, but other G7 members haven't shown much enthusiasm in backing the ban.
So in the 20th sanctions package, we did indeed include a legal basis to eventually activate a full maritime services ban. But we were clear that we would do this in consultation and in cooperation with our G7 partners. But we do remain committed to all of the measures that we've put in place, like the oil price cap, and what we can do to minimize revenues that Russia might gain from the situation in Iran.
Additionally, Brussels has not yet secured the support of 2 member states with interests directly at stake, Greece and Malta. The former hosts a powerful shipping industry, while the latter controls Europe's largest ship registry. Speaking from Montenegro, European Council President Antonio Costa called for the EU's enlargement rules to be streamlined by removing the need for unanimity at each stage of the process.
I believe that we don't need to have the unanimity to open chapters and clusters. We just need the unanimity to close chapters and clusters.
Greece and Bulgaria have repeatedly vetoed North Macedonia's EU bid over disputes related to constitutional matters and minority rights. Former Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban routinely used veto powers to block Ukraine's EU integration. Costa also suggested the use of more transitional periods in candidate countries' accession in order to make the process more efficient.
We learned from the previous enlargement process that we always adopted transitional clauses on policies like agriculture, freedom of movement, and so on. And now, because we are talking about a very challenging enlargement, perhaps we need also transitional clauses on institutional matters.
EU and Western Balkans leaders meet in Tivat, Montenegro on Friday. The choice of venue is highly symbolic, as Montenegro could become the 28th EU member state as early as next year.
Slovenia's parliament has approved its new right-leaning government under Prime Minister Janez Janša, which has pledged tax cuts, targeted spending, and an anti-corruption drive. The vote came after parliamentary elections held in March that produced no clear winner. Former Liberal Prime Minister Robert Golob's Freedom Movement won most votes, but he was unable to muster a parliamentary majority. Janša and his populist Slovenian Democratic Party formed a coalition government with other right-leaning groups in parliament. The new government also has the backing of a non-establishment Truth Party that first emerged as an anti-vaccination movement during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is Janša's fourth term in office. The political veteran is an admirer of U.S. President Donald Trump and was a close ally of former populist Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who was defeated in a landslide election in April.
Preparations are picking up speed just days before an event of global significance, the G7 summit. From the 15th to the 17th of June, the heads of state and government of the world's 7 leading economies will gather in Evian in the French Alps. About 50 kilometers away, in La Roche-sur-Foron, police officers are fine-tuning the logistics for the security operation.
L'objectif premier de la base, c'est de subvenir aux besoins des unités déployées sur le terrain. L'idée, c'est de pouvoir répondre à tous leurs besoins, que ce soit la réparation de leurs véhicules, voire le remplacement de leurs véhicules, mais également leur distribuer du matériel, également les nourrir.
A major challenge, since 6,100 gendarmes and 1,400 vehicles will be deployed to ensure security for the summit.
Il y a de l'escorte, évidemment, c'est une évidence, de chefs d'État ou de délégations, mais également sécurisation de la population.
Enhanced security checks will begin in Evian and the surrounding area with the establishment of restricted traffic zones starting 4 days before the G7 summit begins.
Protests have continued in Albania against a massive coastal development project linked to Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of US President Donald Trump. Hundreds of demonstrators on Wednesday took to the streets of Tirana for the 4th day to voice their opposition to the project that the government says would be transformational for the former communist nation.
Fillimisht ne protestojmë për ndërhyrjen që është bërë të dalin makineritë të lirohet natyra dhe të rikthehet në gjendje më parshme. Por nga ana tjetër, projekti I cili është prezantuar dhe sipërfaqja që prezantohet aty është shkatrimtare, nga renda që kemi parë.
The luxury project linked to Kushner's investment firm and Ivanka Trump spans an abandoned island and a nearby stretch of seafront on Albania's southern coast. It has drawn opposition from environmental campaigners and critics of Prime Minister Edi Rama. On Tuesday, Rama said Albania should not be a country that fears an extraordinary project like this one, adding that, quote, there is absolutely no chance that the investment will stop as long as I'm here.
The owners of a bar that caught fire during New Year celebrations in a Swiss ski resort arrived in court once again on Friday to be questioned. French couple Jacques and Jessica Moretti were to be cross-examined by public prosecutors and lawyers for civil parties caught up in the blaze that killed 41 people, mostly teenagers, and injured 115 others.
Chaque jour, on vit avec ses conséquences en tant que parents, de frères, de sœurs, de grands-parents, d'oncles, de tantes. Et il a besoin de réponses. J'ai besoin de réponses. Nous avons besoin de réponses. Et je suis là aujourd'hui parce que 4-5 mois ont passé. Que beaucoup de choses maintenant ont été apprises et j'ai besoin de comprendre maintenant l'état d'esprit de Jessica et de Jacques Moretti.
The Morettis face charges of manslaughter by negligence, bodily harm by negligence and arson by negligence.
Ce que veulent les familles, c'est surtout que les Moretti arrêtent de se défausser de leurs responsabilités sur d'autres personnes, que ce soit le mystérieux vendeur de mousse, l'invisible contrôleur communal ou leurs fidèles employés. On veut qu'ils reconnaissent leurs torts, leurs erreurs, sans forcément, bien sûr, il ne faut pas être naïf, assumer leurs responsabilités, ils ne le feront pas, mais au moins de la vérité.
In total, 14 people are under criminal investigation in connection with the disaster, including several current and former local officials.